Good evening, buenas noches, and thank you for tuning in. On behalf of all of us at the locally based, independently owned bookstore Books and Books in Miami, Florida, and in partnership with Miami Book Fair, it's my pleasure to welcome you to a virtual evening with Brendan Slocumb to discuss his remarkable debut novel, The Violin Conspiracy, published by our friends at Anchor. This flawless debut will do for classical music what the Queen's Gambit did for chess, says a recent starred review in Booklist. This is a Good Morning America Book Club pick, one of the Seattle Times most anticipated books of the year, one of Medium's most exciting books of 2022. The reviews have been amazing. Brendan Nicholas Slocumb was raised in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and holds a degree in music education with concentrations in violin and viola from the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. For more than 20 years, he has been a public and private school music educator and has performed with orchestras throughout Northern Virginia, Maryland, and Washington, D.C. He is currently working on his second novel. To moderate this evening's conversation, we're joined by Edward Kastenmeier, the editorial director of Anchor Books Hardcovers and executive editor at the Knopf Doubleday Publishing Group. A 30-year veteran of the imprint, he has also long overseen the vintage crime Black Lizard publishing program. Edward has edited and published books by Alexander McCall Smith, Joe Nesbo, Robert Harris, Lars Kepler, and James Elroy, among many others, and now adds Brendan Slocumb to this impressive list. Just a quick reminder that throughout this evening's broadcast, you can post questions below in the Ask a Question feature at the bottom of the screen, and please order your copy of The Violin Conspiracy from Books and Books and support indie bookstores. And now, without further ado, I'd like to welcome our guests to the virtual stage. Hello and welcome.
Thank you. Hello.
Hello.
Okay, someone has an extra tab open. That's the reverberation. Does anyone have any tabs open on their computer?
Probably going to be me. Let me see what I can do.
Okay, but now it's fine.
Oh, okay.
Now it's fine. How are you, Edward?
I'm well, thank you.
No.
Maybe I should talk quietly.
No, check it out. Check out the tabs. It's got to be the tabs.
Try it now.
Open tab.
Hello?
No, still reverberating. Do you have any tabs? Edward?
Yes?
Okay. It's him. It's him because it's not you.
Is it me?
Nope, it's him.
Ooh.
Edward, I think what I'm going to do is just close out your video and prompt you back in. Want to try that?
Hold on, I'm going to try something. If you lose me, I
Oh my God. Okay. Hi, Brendan.
Hey, wait, watch this. Hola, ¿cómo está?
Ay, qué bien, ok.
Mi español es muy mal, pero mejorarme.
No está tan mal, ¿no? Está bastante bien, increíble.
Muchas gracias.
Gracias a ti. Okay, let's try again. Okay. No.
Oh.
We'll get him back. Hang on. These things still happen. It's incredible. Try it. No. Try it now.
Hello, can you hear me?
What is going on? Do you have any? Are you sure you don't have any open tabs?
I think I'm going to call my next book Open Tabs.
Because the next thing we could do is just have you come in on using
How
Chrome.
is this? Is that better?
Much better. Okay. Brendan, Edward, both. Can you say
I
something?
apologize first.
There
I
you
have
go.
to.
Hey, okay, perfect.
Something about my microphone. Because
Yeah, I don't know what is going on. Do you have headphones? I'm so very sorry. But you still seem so happy, Brendan. Thank you.
Every day.
Okay, well,
Is
congratulations on this.
Thank you so
amazing
much.
book. We're selling it like crazy. We are like hand selling it to people. It's fantastic.
Oh, that is, I'm so happy to hear that. I'm glad someone likes it. That was the goal, just for someone to get some enjoyment.
Well, we remember hearing about it like early on.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Better?
Much better.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Christina, for all your patience. And thank you everyone who's joined us. I apologize for that. I don't know what the problem was. I'm not normally someone who has technical difficulties, but thank you, Christina. Thank you, Books and Books, for hosting this event. First off, I want to again encourage you to buy the Violin Conspiracy. There's a green bar at the bottom of your screen, so you can buy it from Books and Books to support this event and to support them. Welcome, Brendan.
Thank you so much, Edward.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Good to see you again.
Always my pleasure.
First thing I want to do is congratulate you. Your book is out in the world now. How do you feel about this?
If I try to give you some words to explain how joyous and happy this is, I would fall flat. So I'm just going to say this is an awesome feeling. It's awesome.
Well, I hope you enjoy it. There are many things that appeal to me about your book. It works on so many different levels. It's a riveting mystery, a fantastic family saga, a compelling underdog story, a mesmerizing look at the world of the arts, an eye-opening examination of race in America, but mostly it's just a fabulous page turner. I noticed the images from comics behind you. So let's use a comics term. Origin story. In comics, they talk about the origin story. What's the origin story of this book?
To be honest, it was the summer of 2020 that pretty much set everything in motion. 2020, so many things happened to so many people, not everything good, most notably the coronavirus pandemic that happened, and we're all trapped indoors all day long. And the events that took place involving George Floyd. It was just like the timing was absolutely perfect. These are stories that I've been carrying around with me for a very long time, and I figured this was the perfect time to get these types of stories out, for people would be much more receptive to listening to them.
Did you all, when you started the book, did you imagine it to be a mystery? Did you always think you would write a mystery?
I honestly did not. It started to take a turn towards a mystery. It needed something, it needed a kick, something. And I figured, you know what? All right, a stolen violin. Well, let's take it a step further. Let's make it a mystery. So that's how it came about. I'm glad that's the direction I chose.
And did you do some research are you a big fan of mysteries? Do you tend to read them, or do you read other fiction?
I absolutely love mysteries. Some of the first books that I ever was introduced to were mysteries. Agatha Christie and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, Hound of the Baskervilles, and Death on the Nile are two of my absolute favorite books.
Very good ones. Very good ones. One of the things that struck me about this is all the strong women in Ray's life. I mean, can you talk a little about that? Did you have a lot of strong women in your life growing up?
I did have a lot of strong women figures in my life. One in particular in the book as Grandma Nora, who is modeled after my own grandma Nora, and she was the sweetest woman you've ever met in your life. And I had to pay homage to her in this book, and I thought she would be the perfect person to balance Ray. And also Dr. Janice Stevens, who is Ray's primary mentor. I had a Dr. Janice Stevens. Her name is Dr. Rochelle Vetter Huang. And to this day, every opportunity I get to talk about her, I will. She taught me not only how to play the violin, but she also taught me how to teach. And pretty much everything that I have done up to this day is attributed to her. And I'm going to forever be grateful to her for that.
You do a great job of paying homage to her on the page. Tell us a little more about Janice. What is the role in Ray's life that she plays?
Janice is the person that really brings out Ray's inner self. She sees his talent, she sees his lack of confidence, and she knows that it's just one of those things that if he gets nurtured, there's no telling how far this kid can go, and she recognizes it. And that's wonderful that she actually took the time to want to mentor Ray, because it's not an easy job. She has a regular group of students that she has to teach, and she's got to do extra work with Ray, but she sees that he's worth it, and it definitely paid off. I believe one of the lines I wrote was that Ray is like his talent is like looking into a puddle and seeing the sun, but Ray is actually the sun, not just the reflection.
Ah, nice. Talk a little more about Grandma Nora. I thought that those scenes were just so powerful on the page, and particularly, the juxtaposition to Ray's mother is phenomenal. So talk a little about that, if you would.
Yeah, Grandma Nora, it's just so funny you say that. As I was writing Grandma Nora's dialogue, I'm not even kidding. I felt like my grandmother was like over my shoulder, and she was talking to me. These were conversations that my grandmother and I had, from everything from the squash at Thanksgiving to just her loving demeanor and how she would speak to him, and just the encouragement that she would give him, telling him never to give up. And even some of the more repetitive lines in the book where she would constantly tell him, your pop used to play fiddle. Did I ever tell you that? Yes, Grandma, like 700 times, but I love hearing you say it so you can say it again. Yeah, she was very, very crucial, I think, to balance Ray. Like you mentioned, with his mom being less than enthusiastic about his career choice, I think Grandma knew that Ray was going to have to find his own way. And I think I mentioned earlier that she actually set him up for success by giving him the old family fiddle. She knew he had something special.
Well, and that brings up the notion of family is another thing that this book is just very steeped in. I mean, the family, for good and ill, plays a huge part in Ray's life. Did you know you were going to do that at the outset, or did that come, as you wrote the tale, did that just develop? Was that part of a theme you wanted to explore?
It actually was a huge part of what I wanted to explore. The original opening to the book was Ray in high school and then going home and having a conversation with his mom, or better yet, having his mom yell at him about something. But yes, the whole family aspect, just in relation to my family relationships, it's just some of those conversations, the getting together at Thanksgiving or the getting together at Christmas and visiting with aunts and uncles and listening to their conversations and how they would interact with each other. That's always been a huge part of my life. And it's always been something very special because, family is all you got. You get one family and you take them or leave them, good or bad. They're yours. You're stuck with them. So I really wanted to show people that, it's not just your family that does things like this. It's everywhere.
Right. And it's fascinating because even though they're not always supportive, they're good people.
Right.
There are a lot of people in this book who, some of the stories are very troubling, I think, about the racism Ray confronts growing up. Can you talk a little about that, about what inspired you and how you decided to tell that story?
Sure, absolutely. And thank you for that question. I think it's great. A lot of the instances in the book come from my own life. I've been a musician. I started playing violin when I was 9. I'm significantly older than 9 now, like 41 years older than 9. And these stories I've been carrying around for so long, and a lot of these events actually did take place. Some of them are modified, just I tweak them slightly, but a lot of these come from real life events, and these are difficult to hear. You know, they were really easy to write because, you know, I lived a lot of them, but I can recall reading certain parts of the book to people and they were just like, yeah, you know, that's a little bit over the top. Things like that don't happen. That's you're stretching it a little bit. And when I would tell them, yes, this actually happened, it may not have happened to you, but it definitely happened to me. Your perception of this is that I'm being, you know, melodramatic, but no, these things really do happen. And if you could put yourself in my shoes for a day, you would get it. You would totally get it. And I wanted to show that this is a way that people can actually put themselves in other people's shoes to see that their perspectives are valid.
You know, to me, that's really, it's an interesting point, because isn't that, you know, to me, that's the role of literature, right?
Absolutely.
You are giving us a window onto something that we might not normally see, or that we might not, as you say, some people read it and they say, this doesn't really happen. And you have to say to them, no, actually, this happened to me.
Right.
And that's, you know, it's a powerful role of literature. And I'm so glad you decided to tell this story. Did, you know, were there other models in literature that you sort of looked to as you decided how to tell that story? Were there other books that were big influences, or was it really just your vision?
To be perfectly honest, it was mostly my vision. You know, like I said, these are stories that I've been carrying around, and as I was writing like I was having a conversation, or like I was sitting in the living room listening to a conversation with people that I know. There were some scenes in the classroom and early on when Ray was in high school, and you know, those conversations, I would sit and listen to the way that people spoke to each other. I would listen to how the teachers, being an educator myself, I would listen to how teachers responded to certain students in certain situations. So it was very, I like to think that they're just real life situations, not necessarily modeled on a specific book or author.
Well, and you know, I think that comes through very strongly, because, you know, without wanting to speak to specific scenes and kind of spoil it, there are definitely moments in the book where we watch Ray watch a scene unfold and learn something about the universality of his own experience, right? Of
Oh
how
yeah.
he sees other kids going through what he went through. And actually, you know, that brings up a point I really wanted to talk to you about. Is you're an educator. Your life is an educator. You know, speak to how you channeled that through Ray. You know, because Ray has that vision from the get-go. He seems to view the world in the way an educator does. Don't you think? Is that something that you see in him?
I do, and that's one aspect that I really wanted to bring out very strongly. As an educator, I see kids like Ray all the time. I've seen years and years and years and years and years worth of kids who are experiences just like Ray's. I don't want to say kids who are lost, but kids who are searching for direction and they need a little bit of guidance, you know. And for my music classes, for a lot of these kids, the music class was it was that beacon that they were drawn to. A lot of kids wouldn't come to school unless, you know, the only reason I'm here today is to come to your class. Okay, you know what? If you made it to my class, then you can go to your next class. You'll be fine. I promise you. Come back and see me at the end of the day. We'll see how it goes. It's just, you know, school is a funny thing for kids and teenagers. It's like you get put on the track to be a doctor or a lawyer or, you know, an architect or whatever, but the arts is such a life-saving force, and it has done so much for so many kids who didn't think they had anything else. It's a sense of belonging, you know, when you're going through that awkward stage of, I'm a teenager, I'm not quite an adult, I'm not quite a kid, but it's one of those places, musicianship, and being in a music class with peers who are just like you, going through the exact same thing. You find camaraderie. You it's a place to bond, and it's a wonderful experience. And I'm really happy that I could bring some of that through on the page.
You know, some of the stories that you've told me that have haunted me the most were about music's role in your life. Do you want to talk about that more? You know, when you were growing up, that is, you know,
Oh
now
yeah.
you talked about being an educator. Talk to me a little bit about what music meant to you, what it meant in your community.
Hmm.
I'd be curious to hear that.
Music was absolutely everything to me. It's a life-saving force. It truly is, and that's not hyperbole, and I'm not, trying to be melodramatic or anything, but it truly saved my life. As I was growing up, I was introduced to classical music, and a lot of the friends that I would play with in the neighborhood, we all played together, and I kind of migrated towards music. And I'm at a rehearsal, or I'm indoors practicing, or I'm on a trip because I get to go to New York for the first time, with a music program. And instead of doing the other activities that my friends were doing, like namely breaking into people's homes and just up to no good, I steered away from that. And music was so important. I mean, even before I was introduced to classical music, we would listen to, my mom was a nurse and she worked the 11 to 7 shift for years. And, we would all sit up, and we'd wake her up at 10 o'clock, and we would sit around the radio, and we could name every single pop song. We could name every song by Boston, by Kansas, by Stevie Wonder, by Marvin Gaye, by, Heart, everybody. We know every lyric to every song. And that was, music was our way of bonding. It was great family time that I had with my siblings together, and, just for years and years and years. And it gave me a real appreciation for it.
And what music do you listen to now? Is it, you play? Well, tell me what music you play, but also what music do you listen to?
I am a classical violinist. I mainly play classical music. Right now, we have a concert in April. I'm working on the William Tell Overture and a Tchaikovsky symphony. And yeah, it's fun and it's really challenging. It's good stuff, but that's why I got into it. But as I'm working out, or if I'm, getting ready in the morning, it's usually, I alternate days between classical music and hip hop. There's, oh, I'm sure my neighbors upstairs are not happy because my hip hop is blasting in the bathroom. Those great acoustics. I'm like, oh yeah, that might be a little loud. Some gratuitous curse words going on this early in the morning, that might not be good. So I have a lot of variety in what I like to listen to. I usually alternate.
And Ray has a real interest in jazz. Do you have an interest in jazz? Do you play jazz? Ray does in the book.
Jazz is one of those things that I wish I were better at. I think that's one reason I wrote Ray so well as a jazz musician, because I am terrible at it. Jazz involves a lot of improvisation, which basically means you take a note or take a couple of notes and you just riff on it. You just play something based on those notes. And if it's written down, I can play every note. I am not a good improv. I don't improv very well at all. And I wish I did. So I think that's why Ray is so good at it, because I have to live vicariously through him.
Talking about Ray and his music, he really has a deep personal connection with his instrument. Can you talk a little bit about that? Was that from personal experience? What do you think the instrument means to Ray?
I think it means several things to Ray. One, the fact that it was given to him by his grandmother, who he loved so dearly, and the fact that it belonged to her grandfather, and everything that her grandfather, he was a slave, and he played his fiddle. That was his job, to play his fiddle, and everything that he had gone through. And when he was freed, just passing the instrument down to his family and just everything that goes along with it. There's a lot of history. There's a lot of family history, along with just having an instrument. As a musician, as a violinist in particular, when you have an instrument that you love, it becomes a part of you. It really is an extension of you, and you can't imagine being without it. Even if I have to go someplace and leave my violin for a couple of days, if I'm out of town, the first thing that I do is I go and I look to see that my instrument is okay. That's the very first thing I do when I come in. It really is an extension of you, and I like to say that it carries a piece of your soul with you.
Wow. And you once told me that the idea of the stolen violin came from a personal experience.
Yeah, unfortunately, when I was in high school, we took a family trip to an amusement park, and I put my violin. It was a Friday we left, came back on a Sunday. I put my violin in the normal hiding spot, which was underneath my bed in the back corner. first thing we get back home and our house had been broken into. We could, you could just tell that your house had been broken into. I didn't look at the, mess in the living room. I didn't look to see if the TV was there. I didn't care. I went straight to my hiding spot. Violin was gone. I did a double take. I did a triple take. You know what? Maybe if I walk back out and walk back in, it'll be there, because I must have missed it the first 6 times that I looked, and it was gone. And when I tell you, it was the most empty feeling I've ever experienced. I would never wish that on anyone. It was a horrible, horrible feeling. And so if anyone sees a 1953 Eugene Lehman violin out there, it belongs to me. I'd love to have it back.
Well, yeah, if it's an extension of you, I would think that would be a very painful experience. One of the things that I think is quite interesting to me, and I think will be to the audience, what is the relationship between music and writing? Do you find the creative impulse similar? Do you think, is it a similar part of yourself that draws you to music and to literature, or are they relatively distinct art forms in your mind?
This is going to be a kind of a messed up answer. I apologize, Edward, but I think it's both. I really think it's both. For me, the musical aspect, as I'm listening to something, I can kind of float off into another world. Okay, I'm listening to this and I'm imagining what's going on in the composer's head. I'm imagining what the people who are playing, what they're doing, what they're thinking. And as I'm writing, I'm like, okay, I want to pretend that I'm watching a movie. I'm watching this movie. What direction will this movie go in? It's wide open. It could be any place, anywhere. And as far as the disciplinary aspect, being a classically trained violinist, I would practice 3.5 hours every single day, every day, rain or shine. And that was just what you do, and that's how you get better. So with the writing, it was the same thing. I would sit down every single day. It's 2.5 hours or 2.5 hours or 3,000 words, whichever one comes first. And there was never any question, never any negotiating. Well, this is what I have to do. And it was actually quite easy to do because I was so accustomed to doing that in my practicing.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. That makes sense. And I wanted to talk a little bit about your writing process. So you were very organized about it. Do you have a place you like to write? Do you have rituals? A lot of writers have rituals around the experience of writing.
Well, I don't know that I've come up with a ritual yet, but I probably will. And when I do, you're going to be the first one that I tell, Edward, this is my new ritual. I'm in my office right now, and for the viewers, you can see some comic book stuff in the background. This is my sanctuary. This is in my apartment. Whatever happens in here with my writing. It's just my little fortress of solitude here. Superman reference right there. I use that, and as far as writing is concerned, I like to organize everything in sections, parts 1, part 2, and part 3. And I will usually go over some topics with my agent, who is fantastic. And, okay, part 1 will just be the introduction of characters. Part 2 will be, let's get some action going and keep it going. And then part 3, if there's going to be a twist, it's going to happen in part 3. And let's see if we can just rev it up and let's just make this whole thing just explode. I like to do that. And then I write every day and get edits on the fly so I can continuously write. And it seems to work really well. I will block out like 2 months, 2-3 months, and that's all I do. I don't do very much playing. I don't do very much teaching during the time that I'm writing. And I get it done because, once you get going, you just don't want to stop.
Interesting. And do you think you don't want to stop, but does it also, the interruption would make it difficult? Like, do you need, just in playing, probably in that 3.5 hours, you're laser focused when you're playing on the music. Do you find you need the same sort of headspace, that same sort of freedom from distraction to write? Or are you you said you also edit on the fly. I'm just kind of curious.
Well, to be honest, write better, and I'm embarrassed to say this. I actually write better when there are distractions going on because I don't know what it is. When I'm practicing, it's I've got to have it quiet and I need to be focused. It's just me, my instrument, and the metronome. But when I'm writing, yeah, there's usually a TV going or a radio, and it's totally fine. And maybe that's why it takes me so long because I'm stopping to listen to what the news just said, or if there's a TV show that I really want to watch, I'll watch the first 5 minutes of it, and then I'll go back to writing. But when I get edits on the fly, I'll send something to my agent and say, this is the direction I'm thinking about going in. What do you think? Okay, I like that. That's good. Well, have you considered this? Yes, I've considered that, and I don't want to do it. And then we usually fight about it, and sometimes I win, sometimes I don't.
Yes, your agent is a pretty determined fellow. I know from experience, so I can imagine that's a difficult negotiating process. What are your, because, and I'm sort of looping back to what we were talking about earlier about the personal relationships in the story and their relationship to your life. What do your friends and family make of this? How do they feel about your novel? How do they feel about the new Brendan Slocumb, successful novelist in addition to musician? How has that reception been?
It's been incredible. Okay, so I've been a teacher for 20 plus years, and I've got several former students who I actually have kept up with pretty well. I think one of my oldest students is in his late 40s now, and we've kept in touch, and just the response it's been amazing. I've gotten some of the nicest. I've reconnected with a lot of people. My family is over the moon. My mom, I love her, bless her heart. She actually went out to one of the local bookstores in Fayetteville and bought every single copy of the book. And I'm like, Mom.
Well, we appreciate that.
I totally do. But I'm like, Mom, you got to give somebody else a chance to read it. And my friends, like my college friends who are aware of a lot of the stories that took place, a lot of the scenes and everything. That was so sweet of you to pay homage to these people and to write about this. And I could see this in you, and that's definitely you speaking. And, oh, that's definitely something Brendan would say, or Brendan, oh, I remember when that happened. And thanks so much. It's just that the outpouring of support has been phenomenal. And I couldn't ask for anything better.
So, kind of summing up, what is the thing you most hope people take out of this novel? Was there something, we've talked about a lot of different issues. Was there something specific that you, above all else, would like people to come out of this experience thinking or feeling or knowing?
I would like for people to understand that music is for everyone. It is a universal language. It's one of the only things that you can do. You can go across the world, not speak the language, and you could play music and have an automatic connection. It's not for people in a specific zip code or with a specific number in their bank account. It's not for anyone of a specific color. It's for everyone. And, we should never deny anyone the opportunity to enjoy and experience any type of music for any reason. Like, I would often get steered towards playing different types of music or listening to different types of music just because of the way that I look. Had my former teachers not introduced me to Mozart Symphony Number 40, I probably would not be sitting here today. It can do so much for so many people. We just need to get the exposure out, and just know that it's for everyone. Every aspect of it can be enjoyed and appreciated by everyone.
That's interesting, and it might not surprise you that as an editor, I think the same about books. I'm so glad you have entered the realm of books, because I think that's also a message we try to get out in the world. And I'm sure, literature must in some way also provide that for you, be something that you feel like, is for everyone.
Absolutely.
Certainly, I talked a little bit about my admiration for the book early on. And one of the things that has really struck me about it over time is that it works on so many different levels that I think it speaks to different people who have different life experiences and different demands from a novel, right? It's working on many different levels, and I think you did a fabulous job of that. And in a funny way, maybe you're channeling this sense that music is for everyone, and it doesn't all have to be the same type of music. It doesn't always have to be classical. And so in a funny way, in this book, I feel like you wrote a beautiful book that sort of does the same thing, right? That speaks to many different people depending upon what they want to get out of it.
I hope so. I absolutely hope so. And thank you for those kind words. You know, I've heard from so many different people, so many different things along those same lines. It's, oh, well, I got this from it. Oh, I got this from it. Oh, I never thought about that, but I'm really happy that you did. That's something that I'm going to think a little deeper about that. I wasn't aware that that was the message that you were getting, but I'm really glad that you got something from it. And now my eyes are open. My perception of this has been modified, and thank you for doing that. I think you're right. I think you're 100% right. It can touch so many people in so many different ways, and I'm hoping that it does.
Yes, well, we hope so too. And you're off to a great start, I would say. Without too big a spoiler, what's next for Bryndon Slocumb?
Well, as you know, Edward, I've turned in.
I do sort of know the answer to this, but I thought others might not.
I've turned in a manuscript for my second book, and I'm actually working on some excellent revisions right now. It's a great story. It's about a composer who is the 20th century he's America's equivalent of the greatest composer you've ever seen. He's written everything that you've ever heard, from theater to symphonies to operas to whatever, everything. He's written it. Everyone knows his name. And the anniversary of his birth is coming up, and a grand celebration across the world is going to take place. And a musicologist and a computer linguist discover that he may not have written any of this music. And the family members who run his foundation will stop at nothing to keep that information from getting out.
Well, there you go. I already know it's a wonderful book. I will recommend people read it when it becomes.
Wait. Can I just mention? And one of the main characters is categorized as what we would say someone living with autism today. So I was really happy to include that aspect.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. So now I want to take a few questions from the audience. So some of these issues we may have covered a little bit, but I think they can all probably do with a little deeper dive. How long did you work on the book? One person asks.
It took me, I started writing July 28th of 2020, and I finished, I want to say October 28th. Not very long.
Yeah, that's pretty quick by many standards. What's your relationship to violins and music?
Violin is like a part of my soul. I absolutely love the violin. One of these days I'm planning on trying to master it, but the day that I master the violin, it'll be the day that I never have to play again. So I kind of hope I don't get to that point. I'm a classically trained violinist, and I absolutely love it. I'm going to actually be in Dallas next week, and I've got to practice because I'm doing a performance. And yeah, so it's good stuff. I'm always honing my craft, and I do what I ask my students to do. It's like, yeah, go practice. Yeah, I have to do that too.
Denise in Cleveland, Ohio asks, what was your feeling when you found out your book was a GMA pick?
I think I passed out. I think I actually passed out for a second. I think I was sitting down, and then I wake up and it's like, was that real? Did that really just happen? I got a call from Edward, and it could not have come at a better time. It was a rough time in my life, and when he told me that, you know what, I remember I was driving and I almost pulled over. Actually, I did pull over. I was like, okay, wait, are you being serious? You're not like trying to make me feel better, are you? No, it was awesome. It was an amazing feeling, and I'm grateful to Good Morning America for selecting the book. This is phenomenal.
Amanda asks, will your next novel also be related to music, which I think we've answered. So
Absolutely. Yeah, in a way that you don't quite expect. It's, you know, these stories, I have to kind of make sure that as a musician, I can get really deep in the weeds and just talk shop to people who don't really know a great deal about music, technically, the technical jargon and everything. So it's toned down enough to where you don't have to be a musician to understand and appreciate it.
yeah, that's actually, and I think one of the things we didn't get to in our conversation that I think is actually worth probing a bit is I love the way you write about music, you know, and you mentioned, I think in the green room beforehand, your admiration for Alexander McCall Smith. And one of the things that reminds me, your writing reminds me of Sandy's, is that you can, with just a very light brushstroke, do something incredibly evocative. One sentence that makes me feel like I'm listening to the music. Sandy does it with landscape.
Mm.
You know, when he's describing Botswana, it's like there's just a little line, and yet it feels like he's written pages about the landscape he's looking at. And I feel the same way when you write about music. Was that hard to do, or was because of your love of music, did that just come naturally to you?
It was a little bit of both. I would describe, like, I would have written in a draft a description of a piece of music, and I knew exactly what I wanted to say and what it made me feel and everything. And then I would let a non-musician read it, and they would be like, "I have no idea what you're talking about. This makes no sense to me." Okay, I've got to try to come up with some imagery that's going to be a little more clear to a non-musician. So I did a lot of that. Um, it was challenging because I'm like, well, why don't you know this? Why don't you know this? I know this. This is easy. Why don't you know this? But yeah, once I kind of got into the swing of, okay, this is what I have to do. I wanted to tailor it towards people who really didn't know a great deal technically about music. So I'm hoping that it paid off.
No, I consider myself among those people, and I love the way you write about music. I think it really, as I was said, I just think you make it come to life on the page in a way that's rare. It was lovely to read the book, and it's one of the things that makes it really kind of soaring, and I hate to say it, operatic.
That works.
um, Christina Powers asks, what have you recently read that you've enjoyed, and what are you currently reading?
All right. Well, I'm doing a lot of writing right now, so my reading I've slacked off a little bit. I'm about to reread the Epic of Gilgamesh because, at heart, I'm a 13-year-old boy, and I just love stuff like that, and it's one of my favorite books. I finished Hanif Abdurraqib's Little Devil in America, and that's my new favorite book. I absolutely loved it. I also finished Cloud Cuckoo Land by Stephen Dorr. Did I say that right? Yes. Stephen. Yes. I was thinking Anthony.
No, Anthony.
Anthony Dorr. Yeah.
Stephen. I was thinking Dorr is right. But
yeah. And that was a really ambitious book. I tell you, it sucked me in the very first chapter. I was like, whoa, okay. This is good. But both very good books. And I'm planning on rereading, because I'm a big Agatha Christie fan, Death on the Nile, before the latest movie interpretation comes out. That's one of the first mysteries that I ever read cover to cover. And I'm like, okay. And I was mad because I couldn't figure it out. And I'm like, all right, she got me. So I'm going to take a page out of her book, and that's going to be my new thing.
Oh, good. Good. Was there a soundtrack to your book, Anne asks, and music playing while you wrote? Did you listen to music when you wrote? And talk a little bit about the soundtrack to your book, if there is one.
Sure. There's I got to tell you, as a classical musician, one of the worst things that you can do as a classical musician for me is to listen to classical music. And if I'm listening to it for pleasure, it's because I have to play it, or I've played it and I just really enjoy it. But I will listen to a piece of classical music and I will nitpick every little thing. The oboe was a little sharp there. The flute didn't play that short enough. Oh, violins were really out of tune there. And that's my experience with listening to it. But as far as the soundtrack is concerned, all of the music that Ray experiences in the music, they came from pieces that I played when I was in high school and auditioned for these groups. And I just fell in love with like March Slav by Tchaikovsky and Fête Polonaise by Chabrier, and I have a playlist on my website, brendanslocumb.com, playlist that encompasses all of the music that is mentioned in the story. And it's a great companion. You want to kind of get a feel for what Ray was experiencing and what he had to learn. It's all on the website, and it's a really fun addition to the book, I think.
I know people in the office loved it. I loved listening to the playlist, and early on, a lot of my colleagues spoke to me about it. So I would encourage anyone out there who's interested to check it out on his website, because it really is. It's fun, particularly when you're reading the book, to engage with the music. Danielle Saluski, I guess you would pronounce her name, asked, what is your link to autism?
Wow. My link to autism. I have a nephew who is living with autism, and I have a lot of friends. I used to work in a school. One of my teaching jobs was I worked at a school for physically and mentally handicapped kids. And I learned a great deal about autism. And I've taught a lot of students with autism and Asperger's. So it just taught me a lot with what they deal with and how to best communicate and make sure that I'm getting through to them, and also make sure that they are being heard. So my link to autism, it's very important. I mean, it's in my family, and it's, I just want to know as much as I can and raise as much awareness as I can for people living with autism.
That's actually a great background for reading the new book. That's very interesting. Arlene P asked, was the violin conspiracy always the title?
Yes, actually it was. And believe it or not, I'm not even going to say how I felt about it in the very beginning. I'm not, because I love it now. I absolutely love it. And I think I just gave it away.
That's fair enough. She also wonders, what are your most favorite and least favorite parts of being a writer?
Most favorite parts of being a writer is I get to do things like this with incredible people like you all who are listening to this Zoom right now. And I get to talk and meet people like Edward, who is a phenomenal person as well as a phenomenal editor. I love being able to tell stories. You can talk to someone all day long and, they'll listen to you or they won't. But, in a book, someone chooses to pick that up and read it and transport themselves to a different place. One of my least favorite things about writing is that you get hand cramps. I do a lot of typing, and
I was going to ask. You don't write by longhand. You do type.
No. Yeah, as a teacher, I make sure that I practice my penmanship often. But yeah, no, I'm not doing it.
Christina Powers asked, what inspired the family background aspects of the story? They were pretty deep and yet inspirational.
A lot of that comes from my own family experiences. My immediate family, like my mom and dad, they were supportive, but they didn't really understand what it was that I wanted to do with music and why I loved it so much. They didn't get it. They're just like, well, you're the only one that does this. You're the only kid in the family who's really this into anything like this. And, I have friends with kids your age, and, they're doing other things. They're playing sports, or well, actually they play sports a little bit. They're into just anything else but this music thing. You're so into it. They just didn't get it, but that's okay. They didn't necessarily understand it fully, but they did support it. So, that's where a lot of the family background intention comes from. And plus, everybody has a little bit of family dysfunction. What's Thanksgiving without some family dysfunction?
Armin Mortimer says, listening to you now, I wonder what aspects of your book are fiction.
Well, that's a good question, huh?
Yeah.
Someone asked me how much of Ray is actually Brendan, and my number is always 92% of Ray is Brendan. It's loosely based on my life. Like I mentioned earlier, some of the events are modified, but a lot of what you see taking place in the book actually did happen. The only thing that is not really me is the real fiction is the Tchaikovsky competition. I didn't quite make it to the level to be able to compete, but I aged out.
So again, I encourage everyone to buy The Violin Conspiracy. There should be a green bar on the bottom of your screen. Please support Books and Books for sponsoring this event, for having Brendan come talk to you today. I really appreciate it, and we like to support the booksellers who initiate these events. So thank you all so much for coming, and we appreciate it.
Okay, wait.
Thank you all. Yeah.
This is what I should have done at the beginning. Had I known.
Yeah, I can play that part. That's the easy part.
Wonderful conversation. Thank you so much. Thanks to everyone for joining us. You have an open invitation to come back to Miami Book Fair in November. We're gonna work on that conversation with Edward moderating a conversation between you and Alexander McCall Smith. So let's.
I'm glad I'm sitting down. Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And anyway,
I look forward to it.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and congratulations on a wonderful book.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
All right, everyone. Take care.